Shri Matre Namaha everyone. I welcome you all to my channel Journey to Inner Light with Shri. Arunam Karuna Tarangitakshim Dhritapashankusha Pushpabana Chapam Animadi Bhiravritam Mayukhayi Ahamityeva Vibhavaye Bhavani. When we sit down to chant the Lalita Sahasranama, how many of us truly pause on the Dhyana shlokas? Most of us hurry through, eager to reach the 1,000 names of Devi Lalita. We barely register the image they offer, a goddess of red complexion, four-armed, holding a noose, a goad, a sugarcane bow, and 5 flower arrows. And we think these are weapons, symbolic, perhaps, beautiful, yes, but weapons. But what if I told you today that they are not weapons at all? Not in the way we think. What if these 4 objects are the complete technology of your own inner spiritual transformation, placed directly into the Dhyana Shloka right at the beginning before even a single name is chanted? Because Lalita Devi is not holding weapons for herself, she is holding tools for you. And the Lalita Sahasranama itself, names 8 through 11, tells us exactly what each one controls. In the second Dhyana Shloka of the Lalita Sahasranama, Arunam Karuna Tarangitakshim Dhritapashankusha Pushpabana Chapam Animadi Bhiravritam Mayukhayi Ahamityeva Vibhavaye Bhavani. We find these words, Dhritapashankusha Pushpabana Chapam. She who holds the noose, the goad, the flower arrows, and the bow. This is not decorative imagery. In Tantra and Sri Vidya, every object the Devi holds is a precise encoding of a spiritual principle. There is no accident. There is no art for art's sake. Every detail of her iconography is a teaching, if we know how to read it. And here is something remarkable. The Lalita Sahasranama itself describes these exact tools in names 8 through 11. When we chant these 4 names, we are not just reciting syllables. We are describing her form and the specific targeted work each weapon performs on our own inner instrument. So, let us go through them one by one, not as distant symbols, as the living tools they were always meant to be. We begin with the Pasha, the noose. Name number 8 in the Lalita Sahasranama is Raga Swarupa Pashadhya. Raga means desire, attachment, longing, the pull of the senses outward. Swarupa means one whose very form is that. And Pashadhya means she who holds the noose. She holds the noose to control your desires, not to punish them, to gather them. Think about this. The mind, by its nature, runs outward. It chases objects. It chases memories. It chases fears. It chases tomorrow. Even when you sit for sadhana, the mind wanders to the conversation from yesterday, the worry about tomorrow, the list of things undone. The Pasha is not a punishment. It is the most tender act of divine love. She lassos your scattered attention and gently, firmly pulls it back to her. In the language of yoga, this is pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses. The noose draws your awareness inward. Without this binding, no spiritual practice can take root. Your mind simply leaks outward. And there is another layer. The noose also represents the bonds of bhakti, of love and devotion. When you love something deeply, truly, you are bound to it. Your heart cannot turn away. The Devi binds you to herself not through force, but through the sweetness of devotion. And once you are bound, you are free, because you are exactly where you belong. So when you see the Pasha in her hand, know this. She is saying, let me catch your restless mind. Let me bring you home. Now, the Ankusha, the goad. Name number 9 says Krodha Karankushojwala. Krodha is anger. Akara means the form of. Ankusha is the goad. And Ujwala, shining, radiant, blazing. She shines bearing the goad that controls anger. Traditionally, an Ankusha is used by a Mahut to guide an elephant. A small hook, a gentle but firm instrument of direction. The elephant is your ego, your ahankara. Powerful, immense, capable of great work and great destruction. An uncontrolled elephant tramples everything in its path, but a guided elephant clears the forest and builds the temple. The Ankusha directs the elephant of your ego toward the divine, rather than towards its own endless appetites. Here is the subtle teaching. In Sri Vidya, the ego is not the enemy. It is not something to be destroyed. It is something to be turned. An ego turned outward creates separation. I am this body, I am this story, I am this name. An ego turned inward, prodded gently by the goad of the Guru's teaching, of your own discipline, of her grace, that same ego becomes the vehicle of liberation. And this is why the name says she shines with this goad, Ujjwala. She is not angry about your anger. She does not strike the elephant. She redirects it, and that act makes her radiant. If I were to say this in a poetic way, the elephant of your anger is not your enemy. It is the strongest creature in your inner forest. She does not slay it. She touches it behind the ear with a hook of light, and it turns, it kneels, it carries you back home. Now we come to the Ikshukodanda, the sugarcane bow. Name number 10 says Manorupekshukodanda. Manas is the mind. Rupa means whose form is. Ikshukodanda is the sugarcane bow. She holds the sugarcane bow that controls the mind. A bow made of sugarcane, not wood, not metal, not bone. Sugarcane. What does sugarcane represent? Sweetness, the sweetness of life, of rasa. The bow from which the arrows are launched is made of the sweetest substance in nature. Here is the teaching. Your mind is the bow, and a mind that is bitter, resentful, heavy, that mind cannot launch anything true. The arrows fall at your feet. A mind clogged with judgment, with comparison, with the residue of old wounds, that is a bow of dead wood. It cracks under tension. But a mind sweetened by devotion, by gratitude, by the simple joy of being alive, that mind becomes the sugarcane bow, flexible, strong, sweet, and ready. And notice this, the sugarcane bow is made from something living. Sugarcane grows from the earth, drinks water, reaches towards the sun. Your spiritual practice is not meant to be dry. The Devi does not hand you a bow of cold austerity. She hands you a sugarcane bow because the path to her runs through sweetness, not suffering. If I were to say this in a poetic way, your sadhana is not a weight you carry. It is a sweetness you taste. The mind that has known devotion does not break under pressure. It bends like a living sugarcane. And from that bow, every prayer is an arrow that reaches its target. But what are these arrows? The Panchatanmatra Sayaka, the 5 flower arrows. Name number 11 of the Lalita Sahasranama is Panchatanmatra Sayaka. Pancha means 5. Tanmatra are the subtle elements that give rise to all sensory experience: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. And Sayaka means arrows. She holds the 5 subtle elements as her arrows. And now, this is where the teaching becomes truly radical. In most spiritual traditions, the senses are the problem. They pull you outward. They create desire. They bind you to the material world. The advice is typically control your senses, restrain them, transcend them. But the Devi holds 5 arrows made of flowers, and she does not put them down. She aims them at you, but not to harm you, to awaken you. The 5 flower arrows transform your senses from doors that lead outward into doors that lead inward. The same eyes captivated by beauty in the world can be trained to see the divine in all things. The same ears drawn to music and voices can be trained to hear the inner nada, the unstruck sound. The same tongue that craves flavors can chant her names and taste devotion itself. She does not ask you to abandon the senses, she asks you to offer them to her. And when you do, the senses themselves become the path. This is perhaps the most beautiful paradox of Sri Vidya. Nothing is rejected, nothing is left behind. Everything, including your senses, including your desires, is turned toward the divine and becomes fuel for awakening. If I were to say this in a poetic way, the world enters you through 5 doors, and you have been told to lock them. She hands you 5 flowers and says, "No, leave them open, but let everything that enters be an arrow, aimed not at the world you see, but at the one who is doing the seeing." Now, I must share something even deeper with you, something that the Dhyana Shloka hints at, but the Sri Chakra reveals fully. These 4 weapons are not just objects in her hand. They are 4 living goddesses. In the innermost enclosure of the Sri Chakra, the very first ring around the Bindu, the central point, 4 goddesses stand guard. They surround Lalita Tripura Sundari in the 4 directions. Their names are Devi Ashwarudha, she who rides the horse. She is the Pasha, the noose. Devi Sampatkari, she who bestows abundance. She is the Ankusha, the goad. Devi Mantrini or Rajashamala, the divine counselor. She is the Ikshukodanda, the sugarcane bow. And finally, Devi Varahi, the boar-faced goddess, the fierce commander-in-chief of the Devi's forces. She is the Panchatanmatra Sayaka, the 5 flower arrows. So when Lalita Devi appears in her dhyana form, 4-armed, holding her weapons, she is not merely carrying 4 symbolic objects. She has drawn these 4 goddesses into her own hands. Each weapon is a goddess. Each goddess is a weapon. And together they form the first ring of the Sri Chakra, the ring that surrounds the Bindu itself. Think about what this means for your practice. When you chant the Dhyana Shloka and visualize Lalita Devi holding the noose, you are not merely imagining a rope. You are invoking Devi Ashwarudha, the goddess whose very name means mounted on a horse, who rides at the speed of grace the moment your mind is bound to the Devi. When you see the goad, you are not merely seeing a hook. You are calling upon Devi Sampatkari, the goddess who pours abundance into every aspect of your being to guide you. When you meditate on the sugarcane bow, you are not merely contemplating sweetness. You are entering the presence of Mantrini, Rajashamala Devi herself, the supreme counselor who sweetens your entire inner instrument so that wisdom can flow unimpeded. And when you offer your senses through the 5 flower arrows, you are surrendering them into the hands of Devi Varahi, the most fierce and powerful commander, who takes your raw, unrefined sensory energy and turns it into a weapon of awakening. This is the genius of the Dhyana Shloka and of Sri Vidya itself. Before you chant even a single name, before you travel through the 9 enclosures of the Sri Chakra, the first enclosure has already assembled around you. 4 goddesses, 4 weapons, 1 complete protection. If I were to say this in a poetic way, Devi Lalita does not fight alone. Her hands are not her own. When she reaches toward you with the noose, it is Ashwarudha Devi riding beside you. When she guides you with the goad, it is Devi Sampatkari reaching. When she bends the bow, it is Mantrini Devi whispering the aim. And when the 5 flowers fly, it is Devi Varahi, fierce and tender, who has already ensured they will find you ready. You are not facing 1 goddess, you are held by 5. So how do we bring this into our daily practice? Next time you sit down to chant the Lalita Sahasranama, do not rush through the Dhyana Shlokas. Pause at the 2nd verse. As you recite the 2nd line of the Dhyana Shloka, Dhrita Pashankusha Pushpa Bana Chapam. Visualize each weapon. And as you do, remember, you are not just visualizing objects. You are greeting four goddesses. You are acknowledging the first enclosure of the Sri Chakra assembling around you. See the Pasha. Ashwarudha, ride swiftly, bind my wandering mind. See the Ankusha. Sampatkari, pour your abundance into this gathered silence. Guide my ego away from its own stories. Turn me toward her. See the Ikshukodanda. Mantrini, sweeten my mind. Let this sadhana taste of devotion, not duty. See the 5 flower arrows. Varahi, take my senses. They are yours. Turn them all toward her. And then, only then, begin the 1,000 names. You will find something has shifted. You are no longer just reciting. You are being carried through the Lalita Sahasranama. The first enclosure of the Sri Chakra is reciting with you. In our first episode, we understood the living power of the Lalita Sahasranama. In the second, we went deep into the first 3 names, how these 3 names contain the entire 1,000, and how they encode the birth of the cosmos itself. And today, we have explored the 4 weapons Devi Lalita holds before a single name is even spoken, and the 4 goddesses who are those weapons. In the next episode, we will continue our journey through the names that follow, moving deeper into the architecture of the Divine Mother's being, which is, of course, the architecture of your own. That was it for today. I hope you have learned a new perspective, one that will transform not just how you see the Dhyana Shlokas, but how you begin every single recitation of the Lalita Sahasranama. If this video has touched something in you, please press the like button and subscribe to this channel. When you subscribe, you are not just joining a channel, you are joining a community of seekers, walking the same path toward your own inner light. Hit the bell icon so that you never miss an episode in this series. And I warmly invite you to join my WhatsApp community. The link is in the description box below. Every month, we gather for group chanting sessions of the Lalita Sahasranama and other sacred texts. We sit together, chant together, and support each other in this path. I would love to see you there. Love and light, Shri.